Hey, welcome to this video. Appreciate you being with me. I want to address a story that has come out of the news not too long ago about the United States being very alarmed, very concerned, as we should be, that China, their cyber army, has infiltrated over the last year now, from the beginning of 2023 to now, many of our critical infrastructure systems: water, gas, oil, power grid. These types of things obviously affect the entire function of our country and ultimately can affect the whole world. But China has been infiltrating through cyber warfare. The Chinese cyber warfare campaign, called Volt Typhoon, as it's been reported, has been active in getting into these systems and seeding them with a malware. Now, what this can do, obviously, is give them a lot of control, a lot of position to leverage chaos. As the article reads, China has made its way into critical American cyber infrastructure without being detected for over a year. The known targets include the water utility in Hawaii, a port on the U.S. West Coast, and an oil and gas pipeline. The goal is for China to leverage a position over the United States to create chaos, cause panic, and disrupt logistics. Hackers tied to China's People's Liberation Army have gained access to more than 24 critical systems, according to a Washington Post report. The newly revealed information provides a more complete understanding of the Volt Typhoon cyber campaign, which was initially identified by the U.S. government around a year ago. Now, clearly, this is a whole nother level of concern. It's one thing for us to worry about, someone breaking into the bank and wiping out your money. That's serious, no question about that. But when it comes to shutting down power grid, yes, it's been reported that a particular section of power grid in Texas was attacked through this Volt Typhoon cyber campaign. This is a whole nother level, because you shut down power grid, you shut down water supply, you shut down these very serious infrastructure pieces of our country, of any country, and you will devastate all the people in that country. Now, a lot of people are concerned about EMPs. I get that. What we do here at BR Coalition, we talk about these things a lot. We talk about being prepared for these types of things. EMPs, electromagnetic pulse, with the explosion of a nuclear device, miles in the atmosphere, that can cause an EMP, which can shut down, obviously, the grid. It can cause a lot of problems. But that hasn't happened. Now, in theory, of course, it could do that to an entire country. But what is happening right now are these cyber attacks. How unwise it would be, honestly, for us to ignore these threats and these warnings. Now, before I go any further, I want to encourage you to go out to brcoalition.com/warfare and get the free download. You can check the link in the description below of our manual that helps us deal with basically spiritual warfare. How does that tie into this? Very easily. The idea behind spiritual warfare is to disrupt, to create chaos, to divide, and to destroy. Now, how can we deal with something like a cyber attack through spiritual warfare? Obviously, each and every one of us can be a type of warrior that gets on our knees in deep prayer. And through prayer, fasting, and all other forms that God gives each of us the ability to engage in any kind of diabolical attack, we can affect something there. We can make an impact, but we've got to get active in that, because that's one thing we can do. Like, I can't make the United States government do anything specifically to harden the target, so to speak, when it comes to cyber warfare. None of us can really do that. Sure, we think elections really can make a big difference, and in some ways they can, but it doesn't make the people in charge, those people behind the scenes who can actually affect our security cyber warfare-wise, do what they need to do. But what I can do is I can get on my knees every day in prayer. I can go before Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. I can affect the spiritual warfare battle that's going on by my prayers, my actions, my fasting. But I want you to pay attention to these stories. These stories are real. They're out there right now. This has been going on for over a year, they're estimating now. And when we see the weather balloon flying over the United States, what we're being told by China, it's a harmless little mistake. Don't worry about it. And yet we know that there's a threat against Taiwan. Now consider this. Some of those attacks, those cyber warfare attacks, were targeted two particular places: Guam, which is a major military installation, a strategic location. When it comes to any potential conflict between China and Taiwan, Guam would be a location where the United States would use if we were to get engaged. And Hawaii, another strategic location. And both of those were targeted with this cyber warfare. Not to mention, anytime you poke somebody in the eye in a fight you're standing toe to toe with them. You get poked in the eye, or they get poked in the eye. That whole side of them is now being affected, and that's going to make it a lot harder for them to fight. You could do a serious poke in the eye to the United States or any country if you shut down their critical infrastructure, such as power grid, water treatment, banking systems, food supply, ports. These types of things are absolutely essential and critical to the function of a nation. We have to be on guard with this stuff. So what can we do? Bottom line is we've got to spiritually be in position to handle this stuff. And again, first and foremost, we've got to be in deep prayer. We have to be. God is making it abundantly clear by allowing man to basically ruin himself when we turn away from God. And we see this in our country, in our world, all over the place. Anytime we move far away from God, we set ourselves up for all kinds of chaos and disorder. And God will allow that to happen. He will allow us to fall into the most horrible tragedies because of our free will. So first and foremost, we've got to get ourselves right with God. We know that. Second is we've got to be taking the steps necessary on our day-to-day natural life to be as prepared as we possibly can. Now, if you follow my work at all, you know that I'm a big proponent of being prepared spiritually and naturally. So I don't go anywhere, for example, without a blessed rosary on my person. This one sits on my desk all the time. Of course, you see the statue of Our Lady of Fatima over my shoulder. These are very important pieces of my life that help keep me in contact with God. But on a natural level, I also make sure I have access to, for example, something like this. This is one of my favorite Lifesaver water bottle purifiers. If the water system gets shut down and I don't have access to drinking water, I've got about a day and serious dehydration is going to set in and cause all kinds of chaos for me and those that God has entrusted in my care. But if I have access to water, a lake, a pond, a stream, and I've got something like this Lifesaver water bottle, which information in the link below, go check it out. I really highly encourage Lifesaver. It's an amazing brand. But if I have access to something as simple as a water purifier, okay, that can filter and purify water, then I have drinking water. And I don't have to rely on the government to come in and save the day, National Guard to show up and hand out water, or FEMA or Red Cross. I don't have to worry about that nearly as much if I have access to these things on my own. And that's one simple example, is making sure that you have access to water, clean drinking water. Make sure you have some food stored up. Make sure you're thinking about defensive measures, protection in case society starts to fall apart. You shut down supply lines to a grocery store, you shut down electrical power grid, medical services, you shut all that down. Our first responders first are going to be incredibly stretched thin. But that can also lead to desperation on the part of everyday average people. Generally good people, you could say, will find reason to become very desperate people if times become so dangerous and desperate. So what can we do? The better prepared we are in advance, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and naturally, then the better off we're going to be for ourselves and for those around us. We're going to be a better asset to communities and to society in general. So if we take those steps now, while we have time, remember, it takes time to train. It takes time to spiritually shore things up. Again, go on out, click that link in the description, get that free download on how to deal with spiritual warfare. That's a great first place to start. How do we keep the demons away? How do we recognize how they work in our lives and in the world? And what can we do? Not to affect just our lives, although that's really our primary responsibility. My job is to take care of my soul first, and then the souls and lives of those around me that God entrusts to me. My home front, my foxhole, so to speak, right here is primary, first and foremost. But again, after that, let's pay attention to what's happening in the news. Follow these stories enough not to be consumed by them to the point of fear and being overwhelmed. But when you see a red flag like this that's launched up into the sky about China's cyber warfare army attacking our infrastructure, showing that they can get into water treatment, gas pipeline, power grid, shipping ports, food supply lines, banking, if they can get into these things, hospitals, they can get into this sort of stuff. Imagine what they could do to wreak havoc in this world. All right, so let's pay attention to the news stories, not be caught up in anxiety or fear, but let's understand the sense of urgency of the times. There's a difference between urgency and anxiety. Let's be ready spiritually, let's be ready naturally. All right, follow my YouTube channel for more. I appreciate you being with me. Don't forget to go out to that link in the description below. Get that free download for that spiritual warfare training manual. And I look forward to seeing you all again in the next video. God bless and strengthen you in this fight.